Lawmakers were too, so they could be there today, about a half an hour from now, for the joint session in which Donald Trump's electoral victory will be certified. We'll have live coverage of this, remembering, of course, what happened 4 years ago. A lot of us are paying attention in a way that we would not have otherwise. This pro forma session became a massive news event and a tragedy. And this time it looks like things are going to go off without a hitch. Kamala Harris will preside over the process as they unseal, count, and certify the votes. Then it's on to governing in the next couple of weeks at least. Lawmakers don't have to wait for Donald Trump to be inaugurated on the 20th, and they've got a lot of work to do. Imagine how Mike Johnson felt last night, waiting for the snowstorm. It was a little bit after 9 o'clock when the Truth Social went out. 3 words, one powerful bill. If you listen to this program or watch us on YouTube or Bloomberg TV, you know that's been the big question around here. Sequencing. What do we do first? You want to hit the border, Mr. President? We're going to do the Trump tax cuts. It would take longer, of course, to write that tax code legislation, so maybe we just deal with the border. The answer is no. Donald Trump wants it all done at once, and there's probably some logic here after what we saw Friday with the election of a speaker. Almost wasn't. There may be really only one shot at getting all of this done, and the idea of coming back around with a second reconciliation bill has people wondering if that, in fact, is the way to go. Now, we heard it from the speaker on this. He knew it was coming. He talked about it on Fox Business. Here's Mike Johnson on one powerful bill.
We're 15 days out from the inauguration of President Donald J. Trump for his second term, and we want to make sure that we're jump-starting the agenda now over the next 2 weeks so that he's prepared and ready on day one. President Trump is going to prefer, as he likes to say, one big, beautiful bill. And there's a lot of merit to that because we can put it all together, one big up or down vote, which can save the country, quite literally. Reconciliation is the way to get it done. Why? Because you avoid a 60-vote threshold in the Senate. We're targeting a vote in the House, it may be in the first week of April.
You know, he didn't use the word beautiful in the Truth post, just one powerful bill. We'll see what they end up calling it here. He actually wrote a lot more. He says, we'll make it even better. No tax on tips. It will all be made up with tariffs and much more from countries that have taken advantage of the U.S. for years. Republicans must unite and quickly deliver these historic victories for the American people. So much for the first 100 days. It sounds like it's about the first day. So Nathan Dean is eating his Wheaties and his phone keeps ringing because everybody around the world with a terminal wants to know what the heck this means for their investments. It's been a minute since we've spent some time with the senior U.S. policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. Did you get shoveled out? Did you plow the driveway, Nathan?
We're still snowed in here in Northern Virginia, so maybe I'm hoping by Wednesday.
They got more in Virginia. There's like 8 inches down in Alexandria. It's like twice as much as the city, but you're a Chicago boy. You're fine with that, right?
I'll drive in sometime this week. So
yeah, sometime this week. So what do you think? One big bill. Maybe it's beautiful. Maybe it isn't. We're going to find out a lot about what the parliamentarian thinks here at some point. Is it possible for Republicans to package the border and taxes in one swing at reconciliation?
Yeah, anything's possible at this point. I mean, this is the point of the administration where everybody's aligned and this is kumbaya. Everybody's, there's a lot of optimism going around the Republican Party, but it's easy to be optimistic when you're talking about high-level goals. You want to keep these tax extensions going. You want to do something on the defense. You want to do something on border and so forth. That's easy. What's more difficult is when you get into the nitty-gritty of how you're going to pay for $4 to $4.5 trillion worth of tax extensions. How are you going to incorporate tariffs into this as a way to pay for it? And that's where things are going to get a little bit bogged down. I mean, remember, Washington doesn't move quickly. And there is no real deadline here. When Speaker Johnson says April or May, there's really no deadline here until you talk about the debt ceiling when the X date comes, probably sometime this summer. So don't be surprised if this process comes into like 2 bills or 1 bill, but ultimately they got to figure out how to do all this stuff without losing just a handful of votes. So I'm saying they can certainly do it, but it just may not be as speedy and optimistic as what they're painting right now.
Is there logic behind doing it once as opposed to twice, knowing that it would be potentially more difficult the next time around? And will the parliamentarian knock down some of the border policy stuff here? Because, well, reconciliation is a budget mechanism, right? If you're not moving money, you're not reconciling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so just for, remember for the folks listening, reconciliation is a process where you can bypass the filibuster. Think of it as a budget resolution. You can't do things like raise the national minimum wage. It has to be things that impact the budget. And Senate parliamentarian is the one that rules on that. Now, theory goes, you could get rid of the Senate parliamentarian and get a new one, but generally the Senate really respects that. So some of the border stuff, if it is funding for the border, I think the Senate parliamentarian would be able to approve that. If it's, funding for immigration policies, I think the Senate parliamentarian is there for it. But what I would say is the idea was over the holiday break that you would have two bills. The first one focused on border, defense, and domestic energy production. Get that out of the way early, and then you focus on tax extensions. The tax extension portion of this is going to be the more difficult one. And so there's nothing that prevents you from doing the tax extensions now or later. It just has to be done before December 31st, 2025. And Senator Thune even just said about 40 minutes ago that he's not a process person, he's a results person. So if they go through this plan of a big, powerful bill, and they begin to realize that the tax stuff takes a little bit longer, I wouldn't be surprised if you could see them change the course and say, okay, fine, we'll put out a reconciliation bill on the border and defense right now as we continue to work on tax, because nothing is preventing them. And Washington loves to kick the can on certain things and take the easy way out, and that's certainly a way for them to do that.
Well, I find it fascinating that we're looking at April 1st here, by the way. It all could come down to April Fool's Day, and that's because that's the date for the special elections in Florida, the 1st and 6th districts. Right, we've got Matt Gaetz, Donald Trump raiding the House to get a couple of folks for his administration here. Johnson said he wants to pass the bill itself in the House in early April. Should we assume that that's the timeline based on the required math to get this done?
So I think that's what Speaker Johnson is presuming for. I'm telling my clients that I think the House vote will probably be before the 4th of July. I wouldn't be surprised if this goes into May or June, because just remember, I mean, you can only lose a handful of votes. And let's just pick on the SALT deduction for a moment, the state and local tax deduction. President Trump is meeting with a lot of Republicans from New York, New Jersey, and California this week to try and stave off some of those concerns. But if you have 6 or 7 members of the House stand up and say, look, I can't vote for this. I'm in a swing district. If I vote to keep the SALT deduction away, I'm going to lose my job. Then you don't have a bill. So I think Speaker Johnson is going to have to just figure out how to get all these parties to play nice. I wouldn't be surprised if they, try for April, and you'll continue to see these statements for April. But I'm thinking May, June is probably more likely time frame.
Don't you love that? You just got exactly what Nathan's clients get. That's why you listen to Balance of Power. We're all Nathan's clients here. Little lightning round, I fear, because we're a little bit short on time, Nathan, but a couple of big ones that we need to hear from you on. As clients, Michael Barr stepping down, the Fed's vice chair for supervision. Is Basel III dead?
Yeah, so I literally am just getting that question as we speak. Basel III, I don't think it's going to happen in 2025, 30% chance. Maybe comes back in 2026. This is a disagreement between New York and Washington we're hearing at the moment, but it really is personnel as policy. We have to wait and see who the next vice chair of supervision is.
Fascinating. What does Donald Trump think about that, though? Who would end up in a role like that?
So, I think the first person would be Governor Michelle Bowman. She is the Fed governor who's been most outspoken in the Basel III endgame. She's a community bank community bank supervisor by trade. I think if she were to come in, the question is the Basel III endgame, should you put something out that's acceptable to the banks, or should you just not put something out at all based on principle? And we're hearing that argument from folks of the Republican Party, both here in Washington and New York. I think ultimately what they'll do is 2025 will be the great pause, if you will. I don't think there's going to be much work done on it whatsoever. And then as we get towards the end of 2025, maybe in discussions with the banks, they'll figure out how to move forward and then put something in place to keep our Basel Accords in line with the international community.
Yeah, producer James, pretty glad we didn't have the Basel III T-shirts made up. I thought that was going to be the big gift this year. I guess there's still time. I saw the statement from Senator Tim Scott. Nathan, my God, from his supervisory failures during the spring of 23 bank failures to the disastrous Basel III endgame proposal, Michael Barr has failed to meet the responsibilities of his position. I stand ready to work with Donald Trump to ensure we have responsible financial regulators at the helm. How will he be remembered in this role, Nathan?
I'm not exactly sure how it will. I mean, he came in with bipartisan support, just because he was an individual that was supposed to be bringing I think he's done a lot that the progressives will be thankful for. He's done somewhat that the banks aren't so happy about. So I think time will tell. But ultimately, the Republicans are going to try and move forward to roll back a lot of his initiatives, and they're going to be able to do that over the next 2 to 3 to 4 years.
Donald Trump on Truth Social just now. Biden is doing everything possible to make the transition as difficult as possible. Despite what we heard from his incoming chief of staff, from lawfare such as never been seen before to costly and ridiculous executive orders on the Green New scam and other money-wasting hoaxes. Fear not, he says these orders will be terminated shortly. He's talking about this drilling ban, presumably, Nathan, in our remaining moment. I'm guessing your clients are asking about this too. If you're invested in oil or natural gas, is that all going to change in a couple weeks?
Yeah, so the power of the presidency is more powerful when it comes to energy, especially domestic energy production. So out of all the sectors that we cover, President Trump does have a little bit more authority via executive order there. So I certainly would expect the president move forward, and then you'll see the regulatory or deregulatory effort play out in 2025 as opposed to 2026 or 2027.
Joining us from his snowed-in bunker in Northern Virginia with, I will add, Stumpy at his side, the great Nathan Dean. Nathan, it's good to see you. Happy shoveling and plowing. He's the best, right? Bloomberg Intelligence senior U.S. policy analyst. We get our hooks into Nathan as often as we can so we can answer the same questions our clients are asking when it comes to investment decisions and exactly what Washington means about all of them. We'll have a lot more with our panel.